Hello, everyone. I'm Bryn Nettesheim, and welcome to this episode of Changing Channels. Our topic today is about work-life balance for working moms. Several months ago, I saw this cartoon on my LinkedIn feed from the female lead. It was a racetrack with men and women, and the women were draped in laundry and lunchboxes, carrying a child, and they had a hurdle to jump over every so often. The school pickup line, the dishes, the dog to walk. While the men's lane was clear, allowing them to run a clear, quick course. And I see it as there is a societal expectation for working women to do both, to do it all, and to do it well. Typically, men do not have to navigate these same challenges. And I promise we are not going to man bash, but we will talk about the intersection of corporate culture, domestic culture, and the various roles that we play across them as women regarding power. And power in this sense isn't calling all the shots all the time or holding the credit card. Power in this sense is setting and holding boundaries and being your authentic self, striving and achieving your goals as a working mother and being fulfilled as a whole self. Achieving the idealized work-life balance comes only from when you can understand your power dynamics. Are you stronger at home and blurry at work? Or do you dominate at work and have little power at home? Because the truth is that we can be many different people in the same person, and you can be different people in different roles. And today we're going to talk about identity as a working mom and the roles we play at work, the company cultures that we participate in, the allies that we can find to cultivate satisfaction and success, and the challenges and solutions we encounter. In this episode of Changing Channels, I am joined by three outstanding, successful women. As we discuss, achieving the idealized work-life balance comes from only when you can understand your power dynamics at self, work, and home. And through this conversation, we aim to protect and encourage women to reach higher in their careers while still treasuring and capturing all that is motherhood. Thank you so much for participating in the podcast today and for joining me. As we get together, my favorite question in getting to know people and having conversations is, tell me about you. What's your career track, and also what's going on in your life? How are your kids? So to begin our topic of work-life balance today, let's go with Heather. Heather, tell us a little about you and your career path, and of course, your kids.
Sure. So I started Channel Maven, my first child, in 2009 and grew that until 2021. I actually was acquired by 360 Insights. And just about 2 months ago, rolled the Channel Maven name back out. They kept the agency. I took the consulting arm, and things are super amicable with 360 Insights, and it's a great group. They're now a client. And I have 2 kiddos, 2 girls. One is 8 years old and a bit of an introvert, but like a total goofball. And the other is 6 years old, and she's a mini me. So if you ever wondered what it looked like to watch yourself in a mirror at 6 years old, like that's what happens to me on a daily basis. I'm like, where does this come from? And people are like, have you seen you? That's you.
That the one on Instagram where she's like doing this face, like,
yeah. If you ever wonder why one of your children could take over a terrorist regime, and why is it always your second, that's her.
Awesome. How about Meaghan?
Yeah. So, thanks for having me on the call today. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor with these lovely ladies. I am in San Francisco, California. I've got 4 kids. 23-year-old who's just launched her career here in San Francisco. So it's kind of exciting to see her in her first big job. I have a 21-year-old that we just took to have her first drinks at a bar last week. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. So we have a lot of action in the house. I think the greatest thing about all of it is they are all very, very close. So one of the 4-year-old was born in a time of COVID. So all of us were together in the house, which was amazing. You will find me at my happiest when all my chickens are in the coop. That's what I like to tell my kids, when we're all under one roof is like the best thing ever for me. And it doesn't happen very often because everyone's, either away at college or doing their thing. But whenever the girls, 2 girls at the top, 2 boys at the bottom. So whenever the girls are having a rough day, they either drop by or they FaceTime, because those little boys are the love of their lives and they are the joy for them. So it's been just a magical and very busy, loud experience, but it's been pretty awesome.
Sounds like a good time. And Chari.
Yeah. So I run the Americas channel at Proofpoint. I got here after years of being on the vendor side, but prior to that, I was on the partner side. So seen both sides of the table from a channel perspective. And I've been in this role now for about 2.5 years. And through that, had my first and only child. So I have an almost 11-month-old little girl named Everly, who is very energetic and expressive. Happy to say her first word was mama. That was a big win in our house because my husband was coaching her on Dada for the day she came home from the hospital. And she's starting to get mobile. So we are right on the edge of crawling, which will be very interesting, I'm sure. Yeah.
It is the next adventure for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it is. And I'll just chime in, right? My daughter Isla is almost 3, and very proud to say that when I came back from my work trip last week, she can fluidly count to 10 now, and I was so proud of that. And I think it's a really good transition into us talking about when you become a mom, there's something that happens to your identity, right? You have to expand and you become more dynamic. I'm curious to know from the 3 of you, what happened to your identity and how has that evolved since you've become a mother?
It's been so long, I barely even remember when I became a mother. I would say, it's very interesting. Everyone's journey is very different. I didn't really want to have kids, which is interesting. And now I sit here with 4. But I was always all about my career. It was, getting the advancement and growing and being as successful as I could and wanting to make my dad proud, right? For all the support he gave me. I wanted to make sure that there was payback so that he knew that I was going to be, great in life. And so the journey of having children with my first daughter, it was much more difficult to have her than I thought it was going to be. So it took us 4 years to have her. And through that journey, it was actually quite the gift because it really allowed me to really want to have her. So by the time she came along, I was like, wow, this is amazing. So for me, it changed the identity in a very big way, where I started to realize, wow, we can have it all, however you want to define that, where earlier I didn't think that you could. And so for me, it was a real eye-opener of my journey of kind of who I wanted to be. And as I fast forward to now, my identity is, I like to think I'm a great leader, but I'm only a great leader because I am a great mom also. And I give myself the grace, even though not all days are great. I don't perform great all the time and in both directions. But just, being able to balance both and having a great career and having great children just makes me successful no matter what happens.
Yeah, I'll chime in there. So same, it was, I had always done things well. Like I started a company and I networked and made a community around me, and becoming a mom was really challenging. And I think I'm glad it wasn't an easy journey because it made me realize, much like Meaghan, that I really did want to be a mom. I had these, I owned a business. I had these like daydreams of, oh, I'll be on a conference call and I'll be like nursing with the thing over and it'll be so easy and I'll be able to be home with my kiddo while, no, like everything was hard. Pregnancy was hard, delivery was hard, nursing was hard. I was a puddle and I just went from being this like person who has a lot of masculine energy just around my career and we all four of us are kind of badasses, and I was not a badass in those moments. So it was hard for me to like see myself as somebody who needed help and needed support and needed to like be a mess sometimes.
And Heather, it's something I'm going to call you out on this one, but it has stuck with me to this very day. You and I talked before I went back to work from maternity leave, and I was like, Heather, I feel so guilty. I don't want to leave this beautiful little child. What's going to happen? And I didn't grow up that way. I grew up with my parents were teachers. They were at home all the
Yeah.
time. So this thought of leaving just was very foreign to me. And you said to me very clearly, and no. You are her role model. You are going to show her what a successful, intelligent career woman looks like. And she is going to know what that is and admire that and respect that and be able to emulate that. And thank you for saying that. Because it's this interesting shift. And Chari, I know, I mean, right, you've got an 11-month-old and going back to work. So I'm curious to know, as this identity shifts for you, how does that impact the decisions you make regarding work?
Yeah. So similar to Meaghan and Heather, it was a journey. It was years of trying. And at the same time, I was the 5-year-old little girl who told my mom I was never going to have kids. And I was on a path of kids just aren't part of my plan. And then it wasn't a biological shift for me. It was more of a personal internal shift in my late 30s where it became a possibility. You know, had I found the right person and, you know, things played out, it was definitely something I would be open to. But it was a rough road until, you know, we were able to have our daughter, and the pregnancy was hard. Like similar to Heather, like everything about it was hard. For me, it wasn't a hard and fast, immediate identity shift. It really felt very subtle. And what you described, the advice that Heather gave you about being a role model, that's what motivated me through the pregnancy, through my leave, through my return to work was this is an opportunity for me to not just tell my daughter how things can go, show her. So that's been a big factor for me. So when I think about some of the decisions I need to make at work, the decisions of time that has me be away from her, it is all about the role model for her. Like my reason for doing things is so much greater than the next promotion or the next industry recognition, any of those things. It's about being a mom that my daughter can be proud of and an example that shows her what's possible. And I have these little things I say to myself, you know, one of them is choose guilt over resentment, because I would never want to resent her or my husband or anything because I sacrificed this other part of me that's been me for so many years to do something I think I should do, not necessarily because I want to. And that helps me make some of the decisions I need to make at work and where I spend my time. The other thing I tell myself is sometimes we do hard things. Like as a mom, as a leader, sometimes we do hard things. And it's about making those hard things what's worth it about what you're doing to give it meaning. But I like every other day, one of those two things is repeating in my head.
And now word to your daughter, it will be soon. You can do hard things. You can do hard things.
Yeah.
Exactly. And let's go on that a little bit more because, you know, Chari, you mentioned, right, there's different exchanges we have to make. Our time is limited. And in that sense, what are some examples of conflicts that you experience to meet your role requirements and to maintain your success level?
Yeah. So one was really prominent a couple weeks ago. There's been a lot of weather news lately. So a few weeks ago, we had a massive storm come through DFW. And I woke up at 5:30 in the morning to like unreal lightning, like the house was shaking. Within 20 minutes, we lost power. I had an Uber scheduled to pick me up at 8 a.m. to get on a flight to California for a very important meeting. Of all the weeks this happens, it's that one where you're like, it would be really difficult to miss this. I had no data service on my phone. AT&T had a data outage. The only thing I could do was text and call. No internet, all of that. My husband's home. He has Verizon, so I'm able to check some things like with my flight, all of it. Creating a short version of this story, I ended up going to the airport. My flight didn't leave until 2:30 p.m. I'm on the plane questioning what kind of a mom am I that I got on this flight and my family still doesn't have power at home. But it's just, that's kind of the reality of sometimes you have to make tough calls, but knowing the support structure I have at home made it easier, not completely, but easier to do what needed to be done to juggle the responsibility. Because I could argue, yeah, someone else could have filled in for me in that meeting, but it wasn't that kind of a meeting, if that makes sense.
That
I
makes
think you'll
sense.
also find, like, I remember being in that first year and feeling like for your child, the sun rises and sets over you.
Yeah.
And hearing you with a 6-year-old as my youngest, I'm like, it gets way easier. I'd be like, "Bye, figure it out. I'm getting on a plane. I'll be sitting by the pool between my meetings."
There's a yogurt squeeze you can get out of the pantry. Right?
Yeah.
It's a good topic to talk about, though. I call it mom guilt, right? And
Yes.
I think
Yes.
we
Yes.
as moms have so much guilt. And, I'm kind of like Heather, but, fast forward even a few more years because my kids are so much older now, but then now I've got the younger one. So I'm in it again, which is weird. Right. But I
Yeah.
had so much mom guilt with the first two, going on business trips, leaving them alone, going on, out with my girlfriends. It's like, well, I can't leave them. What's going to happen? And I have found with time and kind of seeing how they grow up and how I can flourish and they can flourish without me, I don't have the mom guilt now that I did with the first two, which is a real gift to me. I mean, because the mom guilt is a real thing and it's super, super hard. And I think, Chari, you kind of nailed it when you said, my husband stays home and he parents. When you have a structure at home where you can leave them and trust that, they're good, they have their village with them, and that's the right village for them to have, and they're going to be fine. And whether it's a great nanny or a grandparent or a wonderful husband or whatever it is, I wish that I could give new moms the gift that I have now of that no mom guilt, because it's so much better this time around, just
Yes.
because I know that they're going to be fine. They're going to be more than fine. They're going to be great. And me leaving and coming home shows them independence and that you can do everything. And it's a great role modeling for us to be able to get on that plane and go do that really hard job.
I think the thing that still sticks with me, like, I'm a single mom, but have an amazing co-parent. I call him my husband. And it's super amicable, and he has them 50% of the time. We actually live around the corner from each other. So if they forget something or they want to see one of us, it's very fluid. But when they are sick or there's a challenge at school, I'm still primary because I want to be, because that's who I am as a person. Like, especially if they're sick, that for me is they want their mom, and I'm okay with that because that's the role that I play a little bit better. It depends what the scenario is, certainly, but there are some things not only am I better at, but I want to have that experience. Listen, I don't want to have anybody puking on me, like has happened numerous times, but like, I want them to know that that's what I am there for, and that's, you can always depend on me.
There's so many directions we can go next.
I know.
But right, it's about offering what you need to do in your role as mom. The other thing that we need to do in role as mom is take care of ourselves, because the adage is it is very true that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So, Heather, I'm going to call on you for this one, and I'm really going to listen to your
Very good at
advice.
this.
Fitness and self-care. Talk to everyone about this. Like what
Yeah.
inspires you to make time and make that commitment to it for yourself?
And
Yeah,
Heather
I mean-
wins in this category. Just look at her
I
social
know.
media. It's amazing.
Totally.
But not always. And I think that was a big thing for me. So I've always been very good at self-care, like spas and, taking myself out for yoga. And like, I always was very good. We've had a nanny since my youngest was 4 weeks old. And I always took advantage of that. Like something's going on with me. I need time. But I looked up 2.5 years ago and was not happy. Like I had checked all the boxes that I made when I was 16 years old. Like I want a big house and I want a dog and 2 kids and all these things. And I had done very well selling my companies and was like, wow, like I'm still miserable and I'm miserable to be around. And just really took a step back and looked and I was very overweight and my hair was falling out and I was a mess. And I just focused on how do I get to where I want to be? Because my kids, even post-divorce, my kids are like, you're so much happier, mommy. Like I'm fun AF. And my kids love being around me because I feel good. And I know that I look better. Not that looks are important, but I know that my confidence is up and I'm healthier. Like I just went to the doctor and she was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to like bottle it and put it in something because everything, my blood pressure is down, my hair is growing back, my skin looks great. Like it really is time to focus on yourself. Most of us are in our 40s and 50s and like, this is it. You get one lap around and you can be there for your kids, but how are they going to remember you and remember their experience with you? And we do dance parties every weekend in our living room and my kids just think it's the best thing ever. And I take them on hikes and I take them, we're living life. And it's not expensive and it doesn't have to take time out of work necessarily, but it's something that it took me too long to get to the point where I was like, oh, I suck to be around and I should probably change that because I don't even want to be around myself.
No, that's a really great point, Heather. For me, I was probably like in the best shape of my life before this pregnancy. And the recovery process has been a big challenge. I now find myself in the least shape of my adult life. In this last 2 months, I got a lot more disciplined, like unfortunately sacrificing some sleep by getting up early or exercising, even if it's small increments. On the weekends, I go for walks and bring my daughter along in the stroller, just finding different ways to make it work. And I can't wait. I love that you said dance parties because that's on the agenda for my daughter when she's up and mobile. We're a very active family who believes a lot in physical fitness, and being parents in our mid 40s over a little baby, I constantly think about what is my mobility going to look like when, she's 30 years old. And that is another motivating factor to do some of the self-care things to make sure that there's that longevity and presence. But also it gives me a clear mindset at work.
And also give yourself grace. Like you're in the
Yeah.
first year, the first 2 years are just like, yes, your body belonged to your child. It still sort of does. Hormones are still a thing. Like, I think you're doing all the right things. And sometimes self-care is like sitting on your deck with a book and telling everyone to leave you alone.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
who in an organization do you need to talk to find that ally, to develop those relationships, to get that understanding of flexibility, or in extreme cases, to protect your employment?
When I had my first children, it wasn't a supportive environment. And so I had conversations with myself. And sometimes you have to do this if you're in a company that's not as supportive. And I made rules for myself. I said, I will work my tail off. I will be the best employee that you have. I remember telling my bosses this for years, but between the hours of 5 and 8 p.m., I'm not available, like, at all. I will come back online at 8 p.m. and I'll be available all night long. But the 5 to 8 p.m. specifically for moms, I think, are pretty sacred, between dinner and bath time and bedtime. So that was just my guiding principle. Like 5 to 8, I'm not available. Other than that, I will kick ass. And so then just being a role model to myself and to those around me, I think having the guts to just say, this is what momhood looks like, and this is what that brought up a lot of other women and gave them the courage to also say, okay, great, 5 to 8 p.m. I'm not available. And then by pure coincidence, Sheryl Sandberg wrote Lean In, and she specifically said 5 to 8 p.m. I'm not available. I'm like, oh, it's a thing.
Hey, boundaries.
Yeah, I
Firm.
mean, but I think boundaries are one. And then, in company, like I work with an amazing company now that's very, very supportive. And I think COVID allowed most of the companies to get more supportive and understand kind of how difficult the challenge is. But I think for those that are in companies that may not be as supportive, I think you be the role model and set the boundaries and be awesome and amazing at it.
I've
Chari?
I've always been a big believer that the results are what matter. It's not always how much effort, time, all of that. Those things absolutely are important, but the results are what matter. And so my attitude going into it, because it was, I was a little over a year into the role that I'm in my career, and actually how I got connected with Meaghan is my entire career, I had never seen a woman in a VP level or above deal with pregnancy, maternity leave, return to work. Did not have that example whatsoever. So, for me, there was a lot of like internal of how is this going to go? And there wasn't really anyone in my own organization I could talk to who had a similar experience. Larry actually connected Meaghan and I've told Meaghan this, the conversation that her and I had, I think it was only like 15 or 20 minutes, was the difference maker I needed. Like in that conversation, she gave me a vision for what was possible. And she also, like in a weird kind of way, gave me permission on some things that I was wrestling with internally. And it put me in a position of strength and confidence that I didn't yet have. So, I think how I addressed it was, I do a lot of what I normally do is I took charge of what my leave plan and coverage plan was going to look like, what was going to happen when I returned to work. And, coming back into the role, because I was so detailed in my coverage plan, really helped give me some sense of ease, probably also because I'm a control freak. But I think a lot of women, type A women, are that way. And then it was some fairly transparent conversations with people around me. And now I look at my organization where I have a lot of new moms. I've got a number of moms right now who are going out on leave and having their first child. And it's been a fun sort of experience to talk through some things with them, pass on some of the wisdom that Meaghan gave me and that I've gathered from my own experience in talking with other people. But I think, some of it is finding the allies within your company, but it's also looking way outside that. And exactly what Meaghan said, like some of the rules you got to create yourself.
It's this transition from collapse, right? Which is putting yourself in win-lose situations or people pleasing and taking that power back and saying, this is how I need it to be, and I will be successful, but this is my authentic need. This is how we're going to move forward. Thank you very much. Um, related to this, though, I think there's always some concerns or unknowns for a lot of new moms and current moms about how do you maintain your career marketability when someone could look at you and go, well, you're a mom and I can get somebody who can work uninterrupted forever. How do you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a bit at a loss because since having kids, I only actually worked at a corporation for 2.5 years, and they are very like family first. And but I would say, one, we're really freaking efficient and resourceful. So if you have ever seen a mom in the airport trying to figure out how to get the ticket out and the bags in and calm down the 2-year-old and the like, we can come into a group or a room and gain consensus better than just about anyone else. And I think we're really pragmatic when it comes to the challenges that a company is facing. And we're efficient. Like, we're not going out to lunch. We're not standing by the coffee maker or the water cooler. Like, we're getting our shit done.
I think there's an art of prioritization that being a mom just takes to a whole nother level. As somebody who spent most of my career up until now, not a mom, and now a mom, like some of those skills really get refined. To Heather's point, like a lot of shit can get done, even in sometimes a very short period of time. I think being a mom has also made me a better leader. It's definitely had that effect on me. But I think the part of what troubles me with that whole premise that you set up, Bryn, is there are people without kids who have other interests in life too. Just because they don't have kids doesn't mean that they don't have other things that draw their time and attention. And in today's culture and environment, I think there's a lot more awareness that's happening around that. But yeah, that would be my perspective on it.
So, because I think that's a really interesting take. So, how do you know then that you are in a good company environment, especially as a woman? Are there any characteristics that stand out to you all?
I'd say it's more of, I would just end the question of how do you know you're in a great company that's your fit, period. Heather made a great point just in general. I think we've all been in times of our life where we look ourselves in the mirror at night and like, I do not like this person I'm looking back at right now, or I don't like how I'm treating myself or others, or that's always my sign to know that there's something deeply wrong, whether it's the company I'm with, the company I'm keeping, whatever. I think it's really important to have self-awareness of, do I feel grateful and do I have joy? And if I don't, how do I go find that in any aspect, right? Surround yourself with people that give you joy, work in a company that gives you joy, live your life with gratitude and filling those gaps, I think is super important. And the areas that you don't get joy, whether it's a certain person in your life or like a girlfriend gone bad or whatever, time to move on, and that's that. I think those are hard choices, but I think that, I think it's important that we all just kind of, especially with limited time and resources, as you get older, it's even more important to kind of shed the negative.
To be able to identify those toxic traits or toxic environments that are making you feel that way internally or externally, right? It is essentially what I heard you say. You're going to get a feeling and you need to figure out what's causing that. Have Heather or Chari, do you have any other experience of being like, oop, that's a negative, that's a bad toxic environment, and this is what that looks like for people who maybe haven't realized or experienced that?
I was going to say, it's interesting. It's not, sometimes it's the environment or the company, and sometimes it's one person, right? So it's hard to hang an entire organization's positive or negative on maybe the actions of someone that you've interacted with. I think anyone who, oh, this is a hard one, like anyone who makes you feel less than, that is a toxic situation. Hopefully there are resources, especially the two of you can speak better to larger organizations than Bryn or I can right now, but hopefully there are resources to help support you through that. An example I have is when I had Channel Maven was doing well. I decided to start a second company, which was really dumb, and started Spark Your Channel and went and got funding and was presenting to an investor. And part of my story, because people were concerned I was still running Channel Maven, was I came back from maternity leave and my team was like, we got this. Like, you've been gone. We don't need you back necessarily. Like, go on the road and speak, but we don't need you in the day-to-day. And an investor looked me dead in the eye and said, well, don't go having any more babies if you're trying to raise money. And that is toxic, just in case that was a question mark.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rude. That's rude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might even classify that as discriminatory.
I just feel like no one should ever comment on your life, your lifestyle, who you love, how you love, anything. Like, that is your business. And that is, as long as you can get your job done and do it well, the rest of it doesn't really matter.
And there it is. You know, actually, on my way back from my last trip, I met a woman in the airport and we were talking about this topic. And she said to me, yeah, well, my maternity leave was an absolute disaster. I was required to be in the office 5 days a week. It increased my pregnancy to become a high-risk pregnancy. And even when I told them this, they were like, well, you're going to need to figure it out because we need you here. And it's not the only story like this that I've heard. And so I just think that I want to put a little context and color around real life situations where women don't get support in creating a human and the care and recovery that needs to happen before, during, and after. And just to know, to put it really right on the nose, those are not good environments to be in. And that's a
In
sign
case
of
you were
when it
curious.
Yes, you were curious. That's a sign to move on. And because I would hope that we could say, I am worthy enough to go to a place that aligns to my values, that aligns to my being, and will support me.
And those options are out there. Like, there are plenty of roles and companies out there. I'm a big believer in all you have to do is just ask or start looking. If you find yourself, in a company or a situation that is toxic or maybe doesn't support and align with your values, like, that is, having alignment with your values is so incredibly important. And, that was advice my mom gave me several years ago. And I was finally at a point in my life where I was ready to hear that. And so from that point forward, a lot of, the big decisions that I've been faced with, it's been a question of how does this align or misalign with my values?
I want to talk a little bit more about support networks and, to help us be successful because we can't do it just by ourselves. And it just popped up yesterday that CNN published a report. And I have to look at my notes to read the stats verbatim because the numbers are astounding to me. So nationwide, the average yearly cost of childcare rose to $11,582 per child last year. If you have 2 kids at childcare, the center increases 25% more than the typical rent on average in every state. And that tab exceeded annual typical mortgage payments in 45 states, plus the District of Columbia. What this does is, so the center can't hire enough staff at a competitive enough rate to, care and feed and keep your children safe during the day. And families can't afford it. And so you get this mishmash of horrible economics where all of a sudden childcare is really difficult to come by, and quality childcare is difficult to come by. So I want to phrase this up in the lens of what's a good contingency plan and what are good support networks that help working moms be able to do what you can do.
So it's funny, I get this question a lot from new moms calling me saying, what do I do? And I live in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities, in the world, especially for childcare. And there's a lot of different configurations, right? There's nanny share, there's home daycares. My first two girls were home daycare. It was wonderful. Took them to this lovely house and they're with a bunch of other kids and taught them their independence and they can be friends with anyone. And they both spoke fluent Spanish. I mean, it was pretty cool. I think in COVID, the pod system was created where, 5 families come together and they all, rotate which houses their kids go to. So I think with a little bit of creativity, there's a lot of different configurations where it doesn't need to be as expensive as, a nanny in home. That's obviously the most expensive. So I think it's important to look at all those and they're all really, really great options. There's some, there's wonderful things out there. I mean, make no mistake about it, kids are expensive and it's important to know that going in. Yeah, I think there's just lots of options. And I know even on Facebook, I'm in some really great support groups. Moms in Tech is one. It's a national one that, a lot of people in, a lot of moms, and so a lot of banter going on there. And then we have our, SF mom groups, and there's like 3,000 people. I don't know these people, but it's really good to kind of read what other people are going to and get advice. And sometimes it's easier to get it, unanimous or anonymously from somebody that doesn't know who I am to ask. So lots of resources out there to tap into.
And I don't want to end it on a downer, but I think we can lift ourselves up because there's always, so I've learned, no matter what decision you make, the unholy skies of judging a mother always happens, no matter what you decide. So what advice do the three of you have to give on how to handle that judgment or not handle it?
My parents used to tell me something when I was a teenager who cared a lot about what my friends said, or just that teenage drama. And the advice they would consistently tell me is what other people think of you is none of your business. As a teenager, way too over my head and emotions to really get the impact of it. But at this stage in my life, you can think and judge whatever you're going to do. And there were, you could argue like some of the parenting decisions and things that have happened along the way, people would take judgment on. But at the end of the day, I know what we're doing is what's best for her and for our family. And that's what matters.
I tried really hard not to let it bother me. Of course, it always does. I'm also from Boston and have like a bit of a sass mouth. So there was someone who once said like, oh, I don't know how you do it. Like I couldn't go off to work. I stayed home with all 3 of my kids. And I was like, yeah, I get it. I don't know how you do it and depend on your husband for all your income. And I just built a multi-million-dollar consulting firm. And she was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? I said, oh, I thought we were just telling each other why we're better than each other. And she was like, okay. She never said literally another word to me ever again. So to Chari's point, like we all choose our own paths. We all love our kids more than anything. Like it just, we decide how we show that. And I know a lot of stay-at-home moms that when their kids get home from school are like burnt out and exhausted and they're not doing dance parties and they're not doing s'mores. We have a fire table in the backyard. We were just doing s'mores last night. My kids think I am freaking awesome and super fun. And back to our very first point, when I take them on vacation to Mexico and they're like getting surf lessons and eating at the club and they say, Mommy, why do you have to go on this trip? Or why do you have to do this? I say, so that we can do really fun things and go to Mexico and have this amazing life and live in Boulder, Colorado, and, you know, go to an awesome school. So I think everybody chooses their journey. And if somebody says something, that's a them problem, not a you problem.
Yeah, I think one of
So-
my favorite Oprah episodes, I love Oprah. I think she's amazing, but she's like, in your 20s, you find, you know, friend group. In your 30s, you start finding yourself. In your 40s, you start paring back and figure out who you really are. And in your 50s, you don't give a shit about what anyone thinks about you. And so it was a real gift for me and it started triggering for me about mid 40s into my 50s, where I love myself so much. Like, I really don't care, you know, and I've taken such a different path. A lot of people look at me, they're like, why would you ever do that? It's like, oh my God, what I have done is extraordinary. I'm legend. And so I think, you know, we need to carry that confidence within ourselves and know that, you know, we make these choices and we do the best job that we can. And to everything we've talked about, we are amazing role models to our children and to other women around us. And I wish every woman the gift to have this feeling.
That is the power of knowing and being in oneself. And I think that truly is the gift, not just to yourself, but as you said, Meaghan, to everyone around you. So ladies, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to having you back for future sessions, and take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in to this episode of Changing Channels. I hope you feel inspired by our conversation today. Once again, I'd like to thank Chari Rhoades, Heather Margolis, and Meaghan Sullivan-Moore for joining us to talk about work-life balance and the positions of power that we hold as successful professional women and mothers. And for all of you for listening in. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe, hit like, tell your friends, and check out the resources and content we have available at channelnomics.com. Until next time, I'm Bryn Nettesheim.